Well, hello and welcome to TSL Covers Gymnastics. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome the coach of the LSU Tigers, Jay Clark. Jay, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, Jay, I thought this would be a really interesting time because so much is changing in NCAA gymnastics right now. There are collectives, there are fifth years, there's a lot going on with recruiting, and you've always been regarded as one of the top recruiters really in college sports. So I thought it would be really interesting to get your perspective on how things are changing and how that impacts you as a coach. So I know you've been very busy over the weekend with lots of different stuff going on. So where are you at this point in the season?
Um, Today it's Labor Day, so I'm actually taking a day, and I had a few things to do this morning, but it wasn't anything crazy. But we've been busy all summer, as you might imagine, like everybody else, on the road since really, the 1st of July and all the way into August, and just trying to cover a lot of ground. I'm fortunate that I have a great staff around me now with Garrett and Courtney and Ashley Nat, and they have a lot of energy. And as I get older and sort of am entering the twilight, I guess, of my career, their energy has been a real blessing to me in terms of us being able to kind of adapt and adjust to all the changing landscape that is college athletics. And with the portal and with NIL and everything else, they've been a big help in helping me wrap my brain around things that are a little bit foreign to me in some ways.
So what is your year like? Like, do you actually have like a vacation time or an off season? Because you go from NCAAs to transfer portal, which seems like all hell breaks loose in the country of where everyone's going. So how long does that take you?
Yeah, a long time ago, I don't remember exactly when, I sort of made a commitment to my family that we would shut everything down the last week of May, which is like Memorial Day week, and the first week of June. And so for as long as I can remember, we have been able to pretty much stay with that for that 2-week period. And even in an Olympic year, when championships gets moved earlier and everything gets a little bit crazy, if that meant me missing a meet, sometimes that's what I was going to do. So that's usually my window where I really just shut it down, and I take those 2 weeks and I try to be as unavailable as possible, and then ramp it up again once we get a little deeper into June. But that's been my pattern.
So when you're recruiting, now that you have fifth years and transfers and collectives, do you have like a recruiting board that has like Velcro on it, or how are you keeping track of who's coming? Because you have deferrals and a whole lot of a mess going on.
I used to have a board, and now that board is in Garrett's office. But yeah, the board, we sit and we meet and kind of stare at the board as a staff and talk through anything that may have shifted in terms of our perception of what our priorities are recruiting wise, or maybe just talking through who needs to go to what gym next. Garrett's very meticulous and organized with regards to keeping us kind of on a good schedule and a good pace. But we try to do that weekly. In the summertime, we're so scattered that we don't get to do that as often. But now that we're getting back into the fall, Tuesday morning is sort of our recruiting kind of drill down time together. And so that's what we do. But we do actually have a board. It's not Velcro, it's magnet and whiteboard and a lot of scribble and trying to figure out what the best pieces are going to be for us going forward. But again, I go back to the staff. I for so long I recruited largely by myself. I think Suzanne was pretty involved with home visits and those kinds of things when I was at Georgia. But a lot of it was, on the one hand, I was always entrusted to do it. On the other hand, as things changed over the years and the sport has gotten much more competitive, there's so many good teams now, you really need your whole staff engaged in that all the time. And so I'm just really fortunate that I'm surrounded with the staff that I am, because they're very invested in our recruiting efforts.
Now, are you still doing the recruiting in person? Because I've talked to people that have recruited against you before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I do a lot of it. I mean, I go where, I'll still do the evals. I'll still go to meets. I'll still, but it's shared. I think we're all doing that part. And then when we go do home visits, there are some that I'm there for. most of them, I try to be there for all of them if I can, but there's only so much bandwidth, and so occasionally we have to split up and do home visits individually. But I'm heavily involved on the official visits when they come on campus, and I love the relationship building part of recruiting. That's really sort of been the way I've always tried to base our recruiting efforts, whether it was here or previously at Georgia, and trying to get to know the people and develop a rapport with them and understand who they are and how they might fit in with us, or how they might improve us, in terms of what they bring to the table. And that's always been the foundation of the way I do things. I've been through phases in recruiting where I've done, the really stiff presentation, whether it was on a bullet point presentation or a PowerPoint or that kind of thing. But I found over the years that I can be prepared to do that if necessary, but really just try to approach it from a conversational, let's get to know each other, understand what we're going through together here, and just develop some level of a relationship. That's why I'm so glad we're back to a place where we're doing that in 11th grade. It's only been a couple of years since we were blindly committing 8th graders, which I was very vocal about not liking, yet we had to play that game, or otherwise you get left behind. And I'm so glad that now we can have those conversations by FaceTime or whatever, and start to get to know the people that are going to be involved, and vice versa. I think it's important for each prospective student athlete to understand the people they're going to be around for 4 or 5 years. And previously you couldn't do that.
Well, I think it's interesting how sometimes your commits have even done recruiting for you. And I didn't know if this was your genius or what, but I've never seen people that wanted to go to LSU more than Haleigh Bryant or Aleah Finnegan when they were committed. They were posting in their LSU leotards all the time on Instagram for like 2 or 3 years, getting people to go.
Yeah, that's something that happens organically. You'll see that from some, and you don't see it from others. I think it's just about their comfort level, and they want their friends to come. And if they genuinely believe in the place that they're going, or they're excited about it, I think that comes across. And I think that's key in the way we recruit too. You've got to be sincere. Like my first year or two here, I didn't know an awful lot about LSU. I was so immersed in Georgia, having gone to school there and recruited there for 20 years. And I knew every nook and cranny of that university. And when I came to LSU, it took me a while, because all I really knew was the ride from the Embassy Suites to the PMAC, from the hotel to the arena. And I needed to learn about the culture of the university, and more about the school and the people, and yada, 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 on and on. Because for me, the only, if I've ever been effective at recruiting, it's been because I believed in what I was saying. It's not because I was some, master of deception, smoke and mirrors, trying to convince someone to do something that they weren't. So I wanted to be sincere about it, and I found that LSU is also a special place. And as the years have gone by, I think we've gotten better and better, more effective at recruiting here too.
Well, Valerie Condos did tell me about recruiting against you once, and she said that you could sometimes skip the 4th rotation to make sure that you got the first contact with the parents and the athlete when they're coming out of the meet. She said Jay doesn't even need to see them compete. He already knows what he wants, and he's going to go after him to make that contact.
Okay, that may be a little exaggerated, but I do think a lot of times when we're out at the larger meets, I have an idea of who I want to run into from a coach perspective, and who I want to have conversations with, and you try to make those things happen. And I don't think that it's nearly the way she portrayed it, but I think everybody, all of us that work hard at our craft, have a plan, of what we're trying to accomplish, and sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, and you miss sometimes, and sometimes you hit, and sometimes you make great decisions, and sometimes you don't. And it's just, there's not an exact science to it. But I think, again, I go back to our staff again, there's an awful lot of analysis that this bouncing of things off each other that I really think has improved our efforts, because so long as we don't get paralyzed by overanalyzing, I think we do a great job of just providing perspective. And I love hearing Garrett and Bugs and and Courtney, and even our director of operations, Katie, will chime in sometimes, something maybe she noticed or something that that we've talked about in the past that maybe we forgot, and she reminds us of. So it's very collaborative in the way we do things now. It used to be a little more singular in terms of that, but I think we're much more collaborative now.
How involved are the actual athletes on the team in terms of the transfer portal? Like, are you getting smoke signals before someone actually enters the portal? You get a heads up typically?
Of the transfers we've gotten, no, we didn't get. Now, that being said, you do hear things through the grapevine sometimes, but those rarely materialize. Usually when that's going on, I feel like it's someone who's testing the waters, and they're not really sure if they want to transfer or whatever. The others, the transfers that have come here, were very direct in their approach in every case. And so, no, if I get the back channel kind of stuff, I'm first of all, you can't respond to any of that. And I just don't, I try not to involve myself in hearsay like that if I can.
Now let's talk about this year's commits who you got, through the transfer portal. You picked up some good 1.5 vaults, especially out of Utah. So, this is not a bad year for you. So what's tell us about, Jillian and, who you've picked up.
Well, I think, last year we had Cammie join us, and then she had the injury right before Thanksgiving, her second Achilles in her career, and no sign of it happening. She was just tumbling, warming up, and boom, there it went. So it was very heartbreaking for her. And within 10 minutes, she was asking, could she come back for another year? And of course we said, yeah, because she's such an incredible addition to our team, just from her personality and who she is as a human being was just amazing. And I don't know how you can not like that kid. She's just wonderful in so many ways, provides such great energy and leadership right out of the gate. She wasn't afraid to say what she needed to say or what she felt the team needed to hear. And so of course we wanted to bring her back. Jill was a little bit of a surprise to me. I didn't really know much about her. Garrett, of course, knew who she was when she reached out, and certainly went and watched video. And I think she's going to be great. She's a wonderful person as well. A little more quiet, a little more reserved, not quite as vocal, but just a really neat person. And then also Savannah Sab is somebody that knows some kids on our team. She and Elena have been friends, and being coached by Pete before, previously at Hills before that. But certainly everyone in the SEC is familiar with her and how talented she is, and I really think she can help us on every event. So I think we've got in those three not only the vaults, but I think there's some other places where they can help us, and I think Savannah potentially can help us on all 4 events. So excited to get them. The challenge for us is that all of our seniors came back as well, so we've got a huge team. And assuming our health holds, which last year it did not, and it was crazy. I don't know that I've ever been through a year that difficult from an injury perspective. And, it makes you look in the mirror and go, what did we do different? Because we haven't had years like that. And sometimes those things are cyclical, and that's what I hope is the case here. Because it certainly was painful to go through all that, but we like this team. It's a big team, and it's going to be interesting how to manage that, because there's a lot of talent on this group. Not a whole lot of places where you could say if you put this person in over this person, you're really going to see a big drop. I mean, so it could be a luxury if we're healthy and we can really make some strategic moves and resting a lot of people, and we're going to need to. We can't ride Haleigh and Aleah the way we did last year all the way to the finish line, and we're going to need a healthy Kaya Johnson. We're going to need Alona to be healthy. We're going to need Savannah and Konnor and Amari Drayton and Kylie Cohen, the freshman, to contribute and do the things that we know they're capable of doing. So we just got to be strategic, make sure that we make good decisions, make sure our team understands the decisions that we make and why we make them, so that they're not questioning or wondering if they've done enough and why maybe they're not in a lineup a certain week over another. And So that's a good problem to have as a coach. I guess if you gotta pick a problem, that's one you would select, is to have too much rather than too little. But on paper, it's an exciting roster, and I think the newcomers, both freshmen and transfers, have really already sort of assimilated with our team. We go on our team retreat this weekend, and that really sort of marks the first time that we really kind of get to bond together and really get to know each other and understand who we are as people. We spent a lot of time on that and letting them tell their story, about who they are and how they got to where they are and what makes them tick, and learning how to be a good teammate and a good friend, and us as coaches learning how to reach them and meet them where they are is a big part of our early process.
I want to talk to you about team chemistry, because when you were coaching at Georgia, there was a major overhaul that happened to the team. You really recreated that team around Katie Heenan and that class and what their personalities were like. They went from having a very edgy team to a very nice team that had some competitiveness. How do you create team chemistry when you're getting fifth years that have been on other teams? You have the athletes that have been with you. How do you determine who the leaders are going to be, or does it just emerge?
Well, it's tough. I mean, if there was a magic formula to that, we would have all figured it out and been able to do it every year. You're right. You were obviously paying attention very closely, because Katie Heenan deserves a lot of credit for that shift that went on in the mid 2000, early 2000s. I think we as coaches learned a lot from her as a freshman about the investment in one another and what it really is to be a kind of a leader, but a leader who has sort of a servant-minded attitude, like, a helpful attitude, versus a leader who perhaps barks or is kind of has a got you sort of approach. Katie was the kind of leader that could come alongside a teammate, put her arm around him and say, hey, let's do this together, or let's do a little better. And I know as a coach myself, I learned an awful lot from her and that class in general, and watched the way that they were joined at the hip, and they made sure their teammates knew they loved them. And I watched that sort of thing happen in that year when they were freshmen, and we went through struggles. We lost several meets in a row and kind of floundered at regionals. It wasn't easy, but because of that unity, they ended up winning in 2005 in an extraordinary fashion. I think last year's team for us was very similar in that way. The adversity sort of galvanized us and made us very, very close. And we spend a lot of time trying to get them to see the importance of that chemistry or that investment in one another. We refer to that a lot, spending time with one another and challenging them to spend time with their teammates that maybe aren't naturally their best friend, but they need to spend time learning about that person as well. And so it's something that a coach can't snap their fingers and create it. It has to come organically. And I think one thing that I've learned over the years from, in a lot of ways from Suzanne, actually, was you can't force feed. They've got to buy into what you're preaching. So the idea with 18 to 22-year-olds is to get them to understand the value of the decisions that they make, and the value of coming together, and the value of caring about each other and genuinely loving each other and investing in each other and doing it for each other. And I think last year sort of was for us, I think they knew it, and we had that kind of culture, but I think the adversity really sort of reinforced that. And I'm hopeful that this year, coming into that, the team, everybody that was on that team last year remembers what it took for us to get as far as we did, when most people didn't give us a chance to get that far. But now they understand how valuable that piece can be to get them to where they got, and can learn from that and move forward. And I think the people that are here, the newcomers, whether it's transfers or freshmen, in part, they came here because in some way, they saw glimpses of that and they wanted to be a part of it. And they've all expressed that. And so I think that hopefully everyone can do that. I mean, our leaders are our leaders. I don't think anybody, Haleigh Bryant's a leader. Kaya Johnson's a leader. Aleah grew a lot into a leadership role. And we talk to all of them. I don't care whether you're a freshman or a fifth or sixth year senior. we don't do captains, and we want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to lead in their way. Alona leads in a very different way. Alona is a very fun-loving. She brings a lot of that looseness to our atmosphere, and in that way is a very powerful leader as well, because we need that. We need to be able to keep things in perspective when the moments get tense, and Alona does a great job of that. So they all have their way of being leaders. So, to some degree, that's a long answer to your question, but to some degree it's organic, and in other ways we work at it and we talk about it and we reinforce it and we try to make sure they understand the importance of it.
Well, you talk about how big your team is this year. With the competitiveness within the team, how do you use that to make that a cohesion and not a divisiveness? Because when you were in the documentary, when you were at Georgia, it was very clear that there was a subtext of Tiffany Tolnay always being second to Courtney, and how talented she was and that she would have been a rock star on other teams. So how do you get everyone really on the same page?
Well, I think those things are self-manifesting. It depends on the person. If you have a group of people that want to be on top of the podium together, mm-hmm. and that make their sort of their individual goals, not that they go away. Everyone has individual goals, and we have to be able to acknowledge that. That's human nature, especially if you have any level of competitiveness at all. But you have to have people that are willing, not forced to, but that are willing to make those secondary to the team goals. And generally what happens is if they can do that, those individual goals take care of themselves, and they end up coming to fruition innocently if the focus stays on the group. And that's the thing that we work at. I think sometimes it's a challenge, and there's always disappointment when someone thinks they should be in a lineup, or someone didn't do as well as they thought they should, or those things are going to happen, and it's about managing it. It's about what happens next. We talk a lot about that here too. If you're disappointed that you didn't make it in a lineup, it's important to understand, to kind of embrace it, figure it out. Let's have a conversation if we need to, and let's move forward. It might not be anything that you could control. It might just be that, hey, this was the right opportunity to give this person a chance to see what they're going to do. And so those are just conversations. I think the component to that is to be able to communicate. It's one of our big things in every organization. I don't care whether it's business or whatever, the communication is always going to be the thing that can show the most improvement, because even when there's great communication, there's still room for improvement. And it's something that I think we work at. We're not perfect at, but we try to make sure we make room for everyone's emotions. We make room for everyone to have their voice, and we try to allow for space for those moments of conversation to happen and create avenues of communication that hopefully minimize those disappointments when they come along.
How have your goals changed in your leadership? You seem more relaxed than you did perhaps in the past. So how have you changed as a coach?
I just think it's natural maturity. I don't know. You go through things, I don't know. You get fired one good time and things can change. It changes. It just changes not your priorities, but it makes you realize that in some ways what we do is not all that important. Mm-hmm. Look, I want to win every meet. I'm still got the competitive juice. I want to win. I want to win a championship. I have the aspirations to do those things, but those are secondary to me. I don't want to do it at the expense of having good relationships with the young women that we are invested in on our team. I want them to leave feeling good about the experience they had when they were here at LSU. I want them to want to come back with their families and tell their stories and be able to live through those things again with them. And so that's a bigger priority for me. I think I've been very fortunate to be a part of some great teams, as you know. And to learn under some great people, both Suzanne and D-D and Doug McGavin. I learned an awful lot about through for a lot of years, and there's a list a mile long. And I think I'm at a place where I'm just kind of I'm not I'm not content in the sense that I do want to win, and I do want to see that happen again, and I would love to be able to do that, but it's not going to define me. And I've learned that my job doesn't define who I am. It is what I do, but it's not who I am. And I have a great job. I love my job. It's a great job. I think a lot of people go through life with jobs that they don't particularly enjoy, but they do it because it's a means for them and their families, and that's a very honorable thing. I'm fortunate that I can do something that I enjoy, but it isn't who I am. And when I'm done, I'll be done. And when I'm done, you probably won't see or hear from me. And
won't be a volunteer coach coming back. You'll be done. Yes.
Well, and I don't mean that. That's not pointed at anybody.
No, yeah, but
I just
we see Val is still involved with Arkansas,
Yeah.
obviously mentoring Jordan, and
Yeah. I just think I'll probably disappear, and I'll show up if people ask me to come around for an event or something. But I'm probably, I'm looking forward to a time when I can watch it on TV like everybody else, and just I think that'll be kind of cool, and not have to feel the stress of it. It's hard to believe, but this is 33 years that I've been doing this, and at some point it comes to an end, and I'm not projecting that that's any time in the near future, but you start to realize you're not as relatable as you once were, and you start to think about what comes next, and I'm glad to be in the place that I'm at. LSU has really given me a great opportunity, and I really think we're on the cusp of doing some great things here, and setting this program at a place that it hasn't quite gotten to before. But I'm also looking forward to a future beyond that. So I am kind of content, and I am more relaxed than I was. And I think last year taught me a lot too. I learned to kind of throw my hands up. Every time the trainer would call me with a new injury or something, I was just like, now what? And I learned that I can trust the kids. We can trust these guys if they're doing what we're asking them to do, and if they truly believe in what we're trying to get them to understand, that they can be trusted. And I think as coaches, sometimes we try to control every little nuance of everything, and that's a mistake. And I think we have to be able to rest in the fact that we've done everything we can do, and then let them go do what they do best. And so I'm just I don't know. It's probably just maturity. It took me a long time to mature a little bit, I guess. I don't know, but I am more calm than I used to be.
Well, you mentioned 33 years. So how did you actually get involved in gymnastics, for people that don't know the story? Because you weren't a gymnast growing up.
No, I mean, I was a novice at it at a very young age. I was obviously not a highly competitive gymnast. I was somebody that wanted to go to the University of Georgia. In a nutshell, I was not a great athlete, but wanted to be involved in Georgia athletics, whether that meant playing a sport or getting involved in something else. And in the process of, and I'll give you the kind of the Reader's Digest version, but I got to know some of the people on the team: Sandy Roulette, Heather Stepp, people that were freshmen coming in. I had classes in the building of the old gym, where the old gym was, which was at that time was called the Women's PE building. Ooh, boy, times have changed, huh? And so, and it was just this kind of dilapidated old crusty building that, and in between classes, there were these little desks, and I would sometimes go get a sandwich at Blimpie at the time and sit there and eat my lunch while the team was practicing, watch them practice. And in the process, got to know Sandy pretty well. And well, Doug McGavin tore his bicep tendon, and they needed somebody to kind of help out in the gym to do the physical things that he couldn't do, and began working their camps. Got to know, I started Accelerate a couple years later than that. When I graduated, I was going to go to physical therapy school, and I was on a waiting list to get in, and I wasn't sure that I was going to get in. And Suzanne called me and said, look, I've got a position available. It had just opened up, and it wasn't I don't even know if it was full time. I think she was trying to create a position more than anything. And she asked me, was I interested? She liked the enthusiasm that I had and the way I was trying to learn the sport. And so I did that. And then Stormy Eaton was a big influence on me. I used to go out and work super camp, and pushed him for 2 years to let me work it for free just because I just wanted to learn. And I didn't think it would turn into a career initially. But I did know a little bit about recruiting because I had a lot of friends who had been recruited in other sports, and I'd watched the way those sports recruited. And I think that sort of became my niche, initially was to kind of beat the bushes and find talent and be able to develop a rapport and relationship with people. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that part of it. And I was talking about a place that I loved, and it was easy. And, it sort of naturally happened. And so initially I thought this will last a couple of years and I'll find myself doing something else. But here we are, and it's turned out to be pretty amazing. It's the kind of thing where, I go back to my upbringing, and there's a scripture that says, man makes his plans, but God orders his footsteps. And sometimes I think that's sort of the story of my life. Like I thought I wanted to be involved in athletics. I had no idea it would be in this particular sport at the time. And, it just came about,
Who taught you how to coach bars?
A lot of it was Doug. Stormy talked to me a lot. Stormy was a lot more influential than people realize. And he was I know some people, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea. He coached Kim Arnold. And so part of my motivation early on was to get out there because I thought he had great kids, and they always went to Utah, which was our big rival at the time. And I'm like, we got to start getting some of these Desert Devil kids. And so as I started to go out there, I'd listen to him and John Aiken, and, and Stormy was he was a trampolinist really more than he was a gymnast. And he was big on aerial sense and understanding what made a skill work. And I just would listen to him. And he taught me to spot both sides on every skill, whether it was bars or any other event. He had a great deal to do with that. I learned a lot from going in other people's gyms. Recruiting by itself opens you up to everyone. Like all the top gyms in the country, I was able to go sit and watch. And a lot of times I found myself, while I was there to watch a particular kid, I might have been watching what they were doing with their compulsory athletes on bars and picking up drills and things that I would see. And in the course of that, you've developed relationships, and you can pick up the phone and call them. At the time, I was trying to coach club too, right? So I got into the development side and would call people on the phone and say, how do you teach this? Talk to me. Can I come sit with you? Can I visit? And so I would say it's a lot of people. There's the obvious ones, but there were so many that I just would listen and learn. Neil Resnick was a big influence on me with bars. As I had it once I had gymnasts at the optional level, and they were going to training camps where they make a level 10 JO national team. Neil was always there, and I would pick his brain and listen to him and watch him coach other people's kids and try to pick up on things that I was working on at home with ours. So it's a lot of people, and I still, you're always learning. I think I always listen to other people. We bring people into our camp, and, Brian Rochella comes to our camp a lot. And, I've had just a whole lot of people over the years that I just listen to them. And, I don't always agree with everything. But because I don't think I'm not a one size fits all approach. I know, I think textbook is one thing, but then you got to go with what works for the kid, particularly by the time we get them. Like, they've got habits that are just going to be there, and you kind of got to go with what's natural for them. So, but I think, I don't know if that answers your question, because there's just a lot of people that have had a lot to do with my career.
One of the things I remember about Doug McGavin, who you mentioned, is that he would focus on the run and then the round off of the vault, and then the entry, then he'd focus on the body position, and finally the landing. Is that how you developed the Jay Clark double layout off of bars? Because they stick that in a very similar way. Yeah,
it is. It's about where the tap happens. It's about the shape. It's about the release point, the direction. You start with point A and you go from there. And that's, like Alona right now has been she's been one that's giving me fits on that dismount, but it's also, she's tried so many dismounts in her career that we've just tried to stick with this one. And she shows there's even days like, I don't know, she's a 5th-year senior now, and it's still, she shoot it out of a cannon sometimes, and it's not, it's not the best, but I don't know what the Jay Clark double layout is, except I think Karen Litchie was probably the first one that really learned it with us. I say us, that was Doug. Doug was heavily involved in that, and Doug pretty much taught me how to teach it. And so he was always very technical, and always progression was the thing. And so get step A right before you move on to step B. And sometimes you get to step C and you got to go back to step A. And just because that's the nature of learning and skills. And some people pick things up really quickly. Sarah Finnegan learned hers really fast, like 3 days. And she had started it at Fusion before she came to LSU, but then others, it just takes a long time. So I don't know. It's just, but that is philosophically, Doug definitely is the one that drilled that into my head.
Mm-hmm. Why do you like the double layout off of like a full twisting double back? Because you switched Courtney's dismount when she got there. You tried to teach it to Shayla. You did a lot of this.
Because generally it has to do with what they communicate to me. And in Courtney's case, she didn't like to do the full out. She'd get the twisties from it sometimes. And so, it's a straightforward dismount. It's really not that difficult if they've got, a good basic swing and the right timing for a flyway. If they tap too early, it's a problem. But if they're not ones that do that, it goes pretty easily, and you can see it, so it's not a forward dismount. So the only reason I've gone away from anything that they previously had is because they expressed that it was difficult for them for something level or another. Like Aleah, for example, we were trying the full out for her first year here, and about middle of fall last year, it just wasn't going very well, and it didn't go very well for Sarah. She complained about hers too, and I don't know why, but she does that. But Aleah does that beautiful Delchev. So let's do the half in double front. Let's do a Fontaine, and it's blind. It's not ideal, but at least it's going to be clean. And if we can dial the landing in, if we can get to where we can land like Kelsey Erickson used to land it, then we'll be okay. So
was Kelsey's key when she twisted at the top? Like, was that how she stuck it?
Yeah. So I think it's the same thing with Aleah. It's to me, everything with a dismount is about the release point. It's all about the direction. It's got to be consistent. Same as the round off is on ball. The hurdle and the entry for a Yurchenko ball, the release point and the speed of that release point is imperative to be consistent. It's got to be the same every time. So even if you're, the slightest bit different all the time, landing comes as a result of direction for me. It's not. And so we put so much, most people want to talk about stick and how they land and do all that. It's really about the release point and is the dismount going up and down, or is it going laterally or out? And, so those are the things that I emphasize and that I drill most, is just about the direction and the release point of a dismount.
Well, what are you going to do about Konnor McClain's dismount? Because her bar dismount has been the weakness of her entire gymnastics program. She is brilliant on everything, but this bar dismount has been such a problem for her.
Well, we'll figure it out. We got to get her healthy right now and get her, get her strong and get her going again. But I'm not sure. I think we'll figure something out. The rules are such that we have some flexibility, and she can do so many things so well. And I'm excited to really work with her, and I think she's excited to be here and she's surrounded by people that care about her and lots of teammates. And I think it's a healthy environment for her right now. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, we can always do something into a double tuck if we need to. Mm-hmm. I think she'll be fine. I think we'll get full twisting double back. She had one as a younger gymnast. I think when she was still in West Virginia, she was doing a half in, half out, and I always thought it looked pretty good. So maybe we might visit that a little bit, but we got time.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about the potential of some of your athletes, Haleigh Bryant, what can she actually do on vault? She has the floatiest front entry vault I think we've seen in a long time. What can she do?
She could do anything. I mean, she can Rudy that ball, but there's no point in us doing it. I mean, she is without a doubt one of the most naturally gifted, explosive, powerful athletes I've ever been around. And I mean, what can't she do? It's like we don't even have to coach that ball. It's just so natural for her. She's done it so long, and she might need a reminder or two here and there. And in some ways, you wish that the college rules would reward kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, so that a gymnast like that could kind of get out of their comfort zone. But no coach in their right mind is going to take her and have her 1.5 that vault when. I mean, for what? I mean, it's just, so she could do anything. She's crazy talented, super amazing human, like just so humble and so gracious to everyone she meets. And, we've all been fortunate to be around her for the last 4 years. And I'm excited for her senior year.
Well, you mentioned the rules in college. And if you look back to when you were the head coach at Georgia, and even right before, Ashley Postel doing double Arabian, ending with triple full at NCAAs in Super 6, you go to today, you see people mounting with double tucks. They don't have beam dismounts. There's no same releases on bars. When Courtney or Ashley, Andrea Pickens did how many releases? What do you think has really happened there?
I think we haven't. We've been reluctant. Here's the thing: at our convention every year, the word parity comes up an awful lot, and it has for 25 years. I mean, it's been one of the overarching goals, and I think we've achieved it in large extent. I mean, if you think about the late 80s, early 90s, it was Georgia, Utah, Alabama, and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and so now, because we've not changed our rules very much over the course of 2 decades. So now we have a level of parity that's there. But I mean, you can go back further than that. Heather Stepp did 2 full ends, and Hope Spivey did 2 full ends in a floor routine. And I get it that, the trends were different. And at that time, front tumbling wasn't a thing as much. And so they were trying to encourage variety and whatnot. But now, the 2 pass thing has become popular, wildly popular. And I find that to be, philosophically, I don't like it, but I'm going to do it because similarly.
Before COVID, wasn't that supposed to be that COVID, impacted training and they were going to allow to?
Yeah, we tried it at Georgia. Gina Nuccio had a bad back, and she did a double Arabian and a whip half Rudy, and we got killed. I mean, we couldn't get a score, and did it with Shayla because of her back. Tried to preserve their bodies was the reason that we did it. You could always do it. It was never, but it just was sort of frowned upon, I guess. And then I think, the first person to do it successfully and score well was Maggie Nichols. And then it became kind of a trend that people began to follow. And I don't know if COVID had anything to do. Maybe people became more relaxed about it because they had been out of the gyms for a year. And but now it's a thing. I don't mind it. If you have someone that's really versatile and dances well, and they have amazing leaps, and that they complement their, their maybe tumbling's not their absolute strength, but they do enough difficulty spread throughout. I mean, that's why it's called artistic gymnastics. And I think we have to make allowance for the versatility that some athletes may have, and not turning it into a power tumbling contest. I get that. But while I'm not crazy about it, we're going to have plenty of 2 pass routines just to preserve their bodies. I tried to be stubborn about it for a while, even into last year, and eventually just like, what, we're out here opening with a double out and finishing with a double pike, and it's not changing anything. So
How about beam dismounts? I mean, a round off double full used to be the standard. They could launch them, they could float it, they could stick it. And then people switched to this 1.5 that they could do from a series, but they never stick as well. It's flat. You look at Nora Flatley, she could have won NCAAs if not for that 1.5 dismount. So why are people making that switch?
I just think it's every year we go to our convention, and I'm sure some of our coaches will get mad for me saying this, but it's there's a lot of emotion and passion that surrounds sort of the perception of us versus them, or the haves versus the have-nots, and the sort of, whether it's all real or whether it's, sort of conditioned into us. And I think, there's a very clear dividing line in those conversations over people that want to see things progress slowly, but not stand still. My argument always has been that the sport is innately progressive, supposed to be, right? And in some ways so we've addressed the parity thing. We have lots of great teams. We have a super postseason tournament format. It's exciting from the first day to the last. There's no lack of drama in terms of what can happen. We're seeing top teams eliminated every year at the regional level, and that's good for the sport. And I understand the value of that, and I think that's wonderful. But at the same time, I think we've gone so far in our reluctance to devalue a skill or require a little bit more. We took our start value down to a 9.4 a few years back, but we gave it back. Like, so on bars, we took what was an E. If you had a single bar E that was worth 0.2, we took the start value down to 9.4. But if you do that release, you get 0.3 now. So we took it, but we gave it back. We're so afraid to really. It's almost by some seen as punishing the teams that don't get national team members or whatever the case may be. And I just think that's something that we've got to be a little more willing to do as a sport. Now we have this great wave of popularity. Things are going really well, and we do have a great level of parity. Let's not be afraid to kind of, encourage the Haleigh Bryants of the world to do a little more, or, put some mechanisms in place. The Yurchenko full went down to a 9.95, and we started seeing more 10-0 vaults, but did we really create any level of separation? Probably not a lot. So I think it's just an ongoing conversation, and there's that has to continue. It probably will continue in perpetuity long after I'm gone. I think there'll always be friction about it, and that's good, because I don't think you should change for the sake of change, but I think you should be willing to change for growth and to see the sport move forward. I just think that you have to be able to do that and provide some degree of separation. I'm not a fan of the open scoring, and I think we have to stay with the 10-0 scoring system and those types of things that we've been very wise from a marketing standpoint to stick with, I think. But I'd like to see us advance things a little bit more.
Well, you talk about the haves and the have-nots. Let's talk about collectives, because this has really changed the game. You used to have 12 scholarships. You couldn't, any money. Now we have collectives. People can you explain, what the terms of these collectives are? And I heard LSU has a good one. Utah has a good one.
Well, ours is actually in its infancy. It really has just now gotten off the ground. The perception has been that LSU has this great NIL thing because
there's a good perception of LSU between your gym, the salaries that are public, and now this collective.
So and we did the thing with Liv. Liv's like the outlier. She's the poster child, and so we did the thing in Times Square and NILSU and all those things, and it's been good. The environment from a local business standpoint has been great. I think almost all of our kids have benefited from NIL in some way. The collective it was sort of a concept that I couldn't really understand for a while, but effectively what it is it's a for-profit entity it's a corporation that has its own expenses for running its infrastructure, and people can give to this collective. Maybe they're I don't know. They don't have need for direct advertising, in other words, a contract to put your face on a billboard for my business, but they want to help student athletes at their institution. They can give to these collectives. They can designate who they'd like to see it go to. They can just throw it into the big pile and let the collective decide who it goes to. But then the deliverables so say the collective provides a student athlete with $3,000. There's deliverables there, and it might be a community service thing that a charity that the collective has supported, or it might be just an appearance to advertise for the collective, an autograph signing or something along those lines. But there's always some kind of deliverable, and as coaches, we can't get involved, and every state's a little bit different. And this is why I think at some point the federal government's going to get involved and try to put some guardrails in place. But as far as the NCAA is concerned, coaches we can raise money for the collectives. I can go and ask a donor, hey, would you mind giving money for the collective for women's athletics or whatever? But I can't direct the collective on who benefits from those funds. They have
whole team does it go to?
If the collective wants it to go to the whole team, it can. If the collective wants to,
it's like a super PAC almost. Like, does someone run this? Like,
yeah, it's hard to really put a label on what it is. There's really no. It's kind of the Wild Wild West. They can do whatever they want. So, I guess philosophically, it's a difficult thing, because on the one hand, I'm glad that gymnasts are able to benefit from NIL, because we don't have an NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball or whatever. And this is an opportunity for them. And they're, in many ways, they're some of the most marketable people on the campus. So I think they should be able to benefit from this. But the collectives are a difficult concept, because I think that's where sort of the underbelly of it all can exist. I think what you see around the country is coaches maybe getting more involved in that than they should, or that they're supposed to. And the other part is it's not sustainable, because the same people that we're asking to support a collective are the same people that you're asking for scholarship endowments, and you're asking for facility enhancements, and you're asking for, the athletic department wants to talk to them, and the fundraising arm of the university, the foundations are asking, and there's just only so much of that to go around. So I think we're teetering on one way or another. There's either got to be some regulation that comes into play on this that has some real boundaries, or we're headed towards like unionized labor, where there's going to be revenue sharing with student athletes, and that'll change college athletics as we know it. And it will wind up. And my fear is that if it goes that way, you'll see, of course, you're going to see football and basketball and baseball and those programs thrive. But sports like ours and other Olympic sports or non-revenue sports, I fear that programs will begin to get dropped, and in like record speed, because if you're having to take a chunk, if it starts to do a revenue sharing thing, well, I mean, there's just no way to support all these programs around the country. It's just because, like, in the SEC, football is the goose that laid the golden egg, and we all do well when SEC football does well. That's why we have what we have. Is I'm not blind to that. We can do all we want to, but as far as generating revenue, when you have a maximum of six home meets a year, and you have to keep it affordable for families to come, it's just not sustainable. So I don't know. I'm a little on the fence. I go back and forth about it. I like that our kids can benefit, but at the same time, I worry about what it really means for the future of college sports.
Well, I'm curious about the rules of this. You talked about coaches fundraising. So if Suzanne were coaching, right?
Yeah.
And she had a collective, could Don Lieburn donate to that collective, and then Melwood Springs donate, and then Georgia Crown, and we could get McCarr Holmes in there, and we could really.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how far it reaches. Like, I don't know if a coach can actually give their own money to a collective. I don't. If I had any, I would do it, but I can't.
Does this mean you could have like 20 scholarship athletes between like scholarship and collective money, and that they could get?
I mean, theoretically, I guess if you had a collective and an environment that was healthy enough, I say healthy enough, that could provide those kind of funds. I mean, we don't have that. I mean, I can tell you that right now. I
mean, you had the Hope Scholarship in Georgia where
we had,
yeah.
So if you were recruiting in-state kids, Louisiana has one called TOPS. So there's like that can help you in terms of getting walk-ons. But I think, more than anything, like all of our, we have 23 kids on our team this year. And so that means 11 of them are not on athletic money. So, I'm glad that they can benefit in some way if they go out and beat the bushes. Sarah Edwards was a master at it. I mean, she went out and she had more local businesses doing things with her, whether it was boutiques or what, and she's still doing it. She's still making. Christina Desiderio is still making money on social, being an influencer and things like that. So I'm glad it's there. I just don't really know. But yeah, there's really no limitation. I mean, you could carry 40 kids if you want. I mean, you can, and if you got somebody who's willing to seed your collective at that level, I suppose there's no limit to it. I can tell you that that's not happening. Not gymnastics. I think Utah may have they've sort of been the most visible, at least in terms of their collective getting off the ground very quickly and providing their team with something. I don't know exactly what they're getting, but everybody on that team has benefited from that collective. We're not there yet. We haven't gotten to a place where we're there yet. But I can foresee a time where we will, I hope.
Let's talk. How do you manage Olivia Dunne? Because at one point she's a superstar. She's tons of deals. She also has been injured and does one event. So how do you manage her schedule? And then how do you manage that within the team to make sure that it doesn't affect the team in a negative way, that someone who isn't the team, perhaps, highest score, is getting this amount of attention?
Well, the good news is that Liv has handled that amazingly. So she's a good teammate, and whenever she's gotten deals, her teammates get care packages, and she doesn't walk around talking about it. There's not really a flaunting of it. It's to my knowledge, unless, coaches don't always know everything, but I've not seen any signs of any sort of internal strife or jealousies or things like that. I was worried about it. When NIL first started, I thought this is going to create a whole different dynamic. I think more than anything, what I've seen it do is for Liv, it took her a while to get a handle on it. She was stressed out all the time because her time was being pulled in so many directions. And I think she's got a much better handle on it now. It's not something I talk to them about. So whether it's Olivia or Elena or anybody else who's done well with NIL, I don't know what they make other than what I happen to run into in a newspaper article or something. I try to let them, that's their business. Like it's, any more than I would ask you what you make at your job. I just don't think it's, it's appropriate for me to get involved in that. So I think from that standpoint, we've kind of sort of set a standard that it's a separate thing. It's its own deal, and it's up to everybody to manage their thing or have their agent in place or whatever the case may be. But it's not something that I get involved with. I joke with her a couple of times. Like one time she was having a bad day. This was a couple of years ago. And I said, how do you want me to handle this? Because you make, 20 times what I make or whatever, and just cracking jokes about it. But nothing, there's really no real conversations. I don't get involved in Olivia's business. That's her and her family's stuff. If my business is she a good teammate? Is she upholding the standards that we have within our program? Is she she taking care of the things with school that she needs to do. That's my purview, and her NIL earnings or anyone else's, Haleigh's or Elena or anybody else. It's none of my business.
I don't ask because it's a bad thing. It's just human nature. I think I've heard, at UCLA that when, gymnasts went viral, everyone else, it's human nature, wants to go viral as well, which can be a positive thing or a negative thing, and it changes.
It can be. I'll say one thing. I think I'm not allowing, like, the Today Show came in the gym one time, and that was a point where I said, okay, I don't want to do this thing. We're not gonna let them, unless it's about LSU gymnastics. I don't want the national media coming in and creating a circus over something that has nothing to do with our team anymore. So we've kind of put a stop to that. And the cool thing is, like, Liv and her mom are on board with that. They were like, they felt the same way. It made them uncomfortable, because so I think, we've all been sort of learning as we go through this. It's so new and uncharted that there's no right or wrong. I think the good news is that Olivia's got a good heart, and she's not one that wants to rub it in anybody's face. And I don't think any of our kids want to do that, with whether they have we got a lot of kids that have pretty substantial NIL situations. I mean, so none of it has entered the conversations. When I watch them interact with each other in the gym, in between classes, and that kind of thing, they care about each other, and they really are not allowing things that are sort of on the outside or superficial in a lot of ways to get in their way. And I'm proud of them for that. I hope that it's an indicator of a true culture. Culture is only culture if it remains. If anybody can have a team that gets together every so often, and the right group comes together and lightning strikes, and they get along and they care about each other and they do great things together, and then it goes away. What we're trying to do is have, an expectation that, hey, if you come to LSU, it's because you want to be a part of a group of people who care about each other first and foremost, and then everything else falls into place after that. And that's what our hope is. That's our goal.
I'm curious how you navigated two members of your team that are close to you, almost like, well, in one case, family, and in one case, your close friend's daughter. So Elena Arenas, obviously you're very close with her parents, and then Sierra Ballard. So how do you navigate that as a coaching staff?
I don't know. You might, if you ask them, they might tell you that in some ways they thought I was harder on them at times. I honestly, I don't think from in my own mind, I've just tried to treat them like everybody else. I was there the day Elena was born. Sierra and my son were their first cousins, and they were born on the same day. And
weren't they named after Georgia gymnasts, Jay? Was it one of them? Kinsey, one Sierra, yeah.
Oh, my daughter's named Kinsey, and I liked Kinsey Rose. I'd never heard the name Kinsey at that time. I don't know if I've been living under a rock, but Julie and I liked that name, so we named our daughter Kinsey. But we weren't really naming her after anyone. We just liked the name. I don't think Sierra was named after anybody as far as gymnast goes. Lori was like maybe the first person that I really got to recruit to Georgia. And so it ended up having her as sister-in-law. I mean, it's kind of strange how things work out, but
does Stephen Ballard still coach?
No, he and his brothers have multiple corporate endeavors. A lot of
restaurants.
They have restaurants. They a company, PJ's Coffee, chain of coffee shops. They're in so many things, doing all sorts of things in hospitality. They have fine dining in some of the bigger cities in America. They have chains that they've started. They've got their hands. They got their hands in so many things. I really don't know, but they're big, full of energy, and they've always got something new going on. So yeah. But as far as Sierra and Elena go, I mean, I didn't bring them here because of that. Like, Elena was a great gymnast. Sierra was a great gymnast, and I knew they could help us. And I was hopeful that they would want to be here. But in both cases, I tried not to play the uncle or the friend card. I just tried to recruit them like I did everyone else. And I'm sure there's moments of, where they think, he's being harder on me than he would someone else. I don't know. That's human nature to feel that way sometimes, but I really think I've just tried to let them live their college lives and not interfere too much. Pete is one of my dear friends. Kim, of course, also, and she's really good friends with Julie. And so, we've all tried to just make sure those relationships stay intact and stand alone, and they're separate from what we do as far as the gymnastics goes.
I want to ask you about the Alexis Jeffrey situation, because there's a missing component here that I think people don't understand. Obviously you had taken a risk and there was a situation that went on, but you love an Alphon gymnast. I watched every episode of your show back in the day, and you were obsessed with Al and Armenet's technique and how clean it was and how, well it translated to college. Is that someone that got away during recruiting that went to UCLA and that you kind of had your eye on?
Yeah, I mean, we recruited her for a little bit. She committed very early to UCLA, so we didn't really get very far down the road in that recruiting process. And of course, no one was really communicating directly with. Of course, I'm in love with Gage kids. I mean, you just look at the number of. It's
your favorite, right?
Huh?
Is it your favorite, a Gage kid?
I don't know if I have a favorite, but I certainly have a tremendous amount of respect for them. There's a lot of gyms that we've recruited an awful lot out over the years. But I just think that they're trained so well, and their gymnastics is always so clean. And the ones that I've had, they've done well in college. I haven't had that many. We had Courtney was really the first one, Courtney McCool. And then we got Finnegan here, and then of course getting Sarah led to getting Aleah, and then Lexi on a different track. So I do. There's been a lot of them that I never got that I tried, but I think an awful lot of their gym and their history and their ability to coach kids at the highest level. But getting Jeff obviously was much publicized in terms of the things that went on surrounding that. And, and I'll say the same thing I said then. All I can say is the process that we went through on our end was as exhaustive and inclusive a process as it could have possibly been, whether it was our team itself or Ashley Claire Kearney or Dr. Lori Williams here, who's our Title IX. Once some of the things we started to hear certain things, we put the wheels in motion to try and ascertain what the truth was. And, but as I said then, and I'll say now, no one to my knowledge, ever alleged the things that we heard on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not to that degree. And look, we're all flawed. And if I have ever, subjected our program, that was the thing I was worried about. Did I do something that was going to harm the program, inadvertently? And that's why I sought the counsel of the people that are here. And I thought we did as good a job as could be expected of doing that. And she's a great teammate she's to all of our kids. And she's not a bad kid, and she's not a racist, and she's not the things that she was called. And there's some people that'll never change their mind about that, and I understand that. But we go through what we go through. And as I said then, and I'll say now, if I ever felt like there was racism going on in our program, we'd cut it off at the knees. That is not who we are. We have a very diverse team in every sense of the word. Mm-hmm. And we celebrate that. We love that. We talk about it. Are there ways we can improve? Always, yes. And but we seek things in our community that we can be involved in. I'm not interested in putting on a display for everybody. I'm interested in having real human interaction with one another, understanding each other's hurts, understanding each other's experiences in life, and genuinely caring about each other. And I will advocate for every person on our team. I'm not a political activist. I perhaps in my past have, probably been more political than I ever should have been, but I'm not someone who is everybody go to your corner and don't speak to each other. I think this world could benefit an awful lot from putting people from all walks of life and all backgrounds and all viewpoints in the same room. And it's the beauty of what our team is right now. It's the thing that I enjoy as much as any part, is to be able to see that and watch how they interact with one another, and to see the things that they experience together. We have Asian Americans and African Americans, and I've got a Russian American, and I've got a member of LGBTQ community on my team. I've got it's what the world should look like, and in many ways. It doesn't make us perfect, and it doesn't mean that there's not things we can do a better job of, but so much surrounded that just was simply not true. And if people that are on the outside of things are always going to want to form their opinions, and they're always going to want to know all the details, and we're not obligated to give everyone all the details. These are people's lives that we're talking about. And I can tell you right now that Alexis Jeffrey is loved by her teammates, all of them. And I've probably gone on more about that than I should, but I think she took a lot of heat, and and probably will, to some extent, forever, over hearsay and lack of clarity. And to this day, I don't even have clarity on all of it. I don't know that any of us ever will, except the people that were actually there and experienced it.
Well, I want to talk about another recruit who got away, because she's now, I think, one of the most dangerous incoming coaches in the NCAA, who could be challenging everyone. And that's Ashley Miles, who you were in a very intense recruiting situation for against Alabama. So what do you make of her as a coach? And what do you think about recruiting?
You remember things that I don't even like. That you're right.
Suzanne said that she benched Marlene because she didn't like what she did during her recruiting trip, that she didn't pay enough attention. And that was the year she tore her Achilles. And so that is out of Suzanne's own mouth. So that is.
Even I'm not aware of that, but you're right. We did recruit Ashley Miles hard, and really went all in, and she's awesome. I mean, she just talk to her for 5 minutes. She's going to do great there. And she hadn't been coaching, but I think she's obviously knows what she's doing. She knows the sport. She's got a rebuild that she's got to do up there, but I think the world of her. I talked to her maybe a week ago. In fact, I got to call her back over some scheduling stuff that we were talking about, but I think the world of her. I hope she does great. I have every reason to believe that she will. And if she doesn't know how to do something, she'll find it. I mean, that's just the kind of person she is. And so I know she's excited about the opportunity, and she's going to do great things, I'm sure.
What makes KJ Kindler so deadly as a coach, and where does she rank amongst the Sarahs and Gregs and Suzannes and Biles? Yeah,
she's got to be up there with them at least. I mean, I will say this: I have the utmost respect for that entire staff. Tom Haleigh is one of my best friends in the world. KJ and Lou have always been very gracious with me. I think there's a mutual respect between us. We're different. Like, I can say that our program is definitely different, but there's no doubt they've been the gold standard, for a while, and they do great things. KJ is relentless. She's intense. She's very attentive to all detail. She is. She's just good. I don't know how else to say it. She's just very good, and she knows what she wants, and she doesn't let up till she gets it. And so
But she's not filling the arenas yet, like you guys are in the SEC.
Well,
but
I
it's
think
coming,
they're getting better at it. I don't think it was something in it. I'd let her speak for herself, but I don't think it's something that in the early going. I don't think she was trying to win. When she went to Oklahoma, and I think she's now kind of been able, now that she's done that, is sort of wrapping herself around the idea of handling the marketing stuff. And I mean, if you look back, I mean, here we've been able to fill the arena without having won a championship yet.
Mm-hmm.
But go back to even like with Suzanne at Georgia, she won in 87 and 89. I don't think we had our first sellout until the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And so the winning came first in that situation as well, as same at Alabama, probably at Utah too. I don't know their history quite as well, but I think here at LSU it's been a little bit different in that we were able to implement a lot of the marketing strategies that had happened in other places, put them into play here, and we've been able to get the attendance up. We still haven't won a national title, so we've been close 3 times. We've been second, but so it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's a weakness. I just think it's something that she's just now beginning to address. They're gonna fill that place up. I mean, I don't think it's certainly a blemish on her career by any means. I mean, my goodness, she's awesome. I mean, I think the world of them, and have tremendous respect for them.
One of my favorite KJ details is that she makes the girls, they buy the biggest bottles of water for each member of the team before they get on an airplane, and they're so consumed with how they will react to flying that they are required to drink the entire bottle of water before they land. And that's the level of detail that KJ's at, and I respect that. Yeah,
I do too. And whereas we're a little different, like I don't buy the bottle of water for them, but
well, Jay, this is why you were second. Maybe you got to get the bottle of water so you can win this year, because I've heard that it's your year.
I don't know. I don't make predictions like that. I like this team. I like the potential of this team. I'll say that, but there's a lot that has to happen between now and then. And if our heads are right and if our health holds, yeah, I think anything can happen. And I wouldn't shy away from it, but I'm also not gonna, that's why you go through a season. It's start predicting things like that. That'll bite you in the butt. So I'll leave other people. I'll let Debbie predict that if she wants to. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
You're a football fan who follows this. Now, I want to ask you about Garrett on your staff, because there's the way you learned, and I don't know if this is true or not, the way that you learned the sport. I heard that you helped him learn gymnastics in a similar way.
I would say that Courtney McCool helped him the most. I mean, I would say his wife probably taught him the most, and he immersed himself in it for sure. Going back to 2009 when he was our director of operations at Georgia, he was immersing himself in it then, and then went to Cincinnati and coached some of their lower level optional kids. Then they went to TWU, and all along, I think Court has been, kind of part of his path to learning, but he's reached out and he's gotten to know a lot of coaches and picked their brains and learned and still's doing that. So he's similar to me in that I think the recruiting piece was something that he felt he could contribute very quickly with and has. And so we have a good balance between, I mean, Courtney's our grinder. I think, she's in the gym. That's all she wants to do is be in the gym and coach. She loves gymnastics to her core and wants to drill and find new ways of ironing out the wrinkles in what they're doing. Bugs is a similar animal that way. She was raised by Ray and Joan Nat, Joan being an Olympian and her being raised in a coach's household. She can be intense too, but has the right demeanor for balance beam, I believe. I just think we have a good quality, good balance between us. But Garrett's path has been similar on the surface, but in a lot of ways it's different. His has been much more accelerated than mine. I mean, I was just the little kid that that Doug and Suzanne were raising for a long time, and he's been much more, his trajectory has been much more, and he knows more at this stage of his career than I did in mine. So
what about, I want to ask you about Kevin Kopp, because when you were at Georgia, I had graduated from journalism school, and I was very impressed with how much he learned about gymnastics as a broadcaster. Did he learn that from you, and what is he doing now?
Kevin was natural. I forget how we discovered him. He was working in the department, like with the website georgiadogs.com, and he was going to do some of the video stuff. It was kind of a new thing, video was on the internet, was kind of becoming everybody was beginning to try to get more creative with some of that. And when Suzanne and I had the show, it was Suzanne's show, but she brought me into it, and we just sort of bantered on the Gym Dog show between the two of us. There was never what do you call it, like a host or whatever.
That was a riveting show, Jay. Let me tell you, just let Suzanne run and talk about whatever she wants.
It was, television gold. But it was also she was pioneering in that way. And what it allowed us to do, number one, it reached out to our local fan base, but it allowed us to have content that we could use in recruiting, that because you're still not allowed to create video content specifically for recruiting. So this was video content made for a TV show, and we were able to take segments and create different things and show highlights and do things like that would help us in recruiting. So it was part marketing, it was part recruiting, it was part just increasing the footprint of the program. And, it was done on a shoestring budget, and I'm sure it wasn't. Are you there? Yeah, I thought I lost you. I'm sure it wasn't the most entertaining show all the time, but it was great. And so Kevin, I just felt like his delivery was so good when I would see him do on camera things, and I thought like he could be the host. Because when I became the head coach, I was like, let's just do it this way. Let's have a host, and he can kind of direct the conversation. And he just was a natural, and he still doing it. I think he still calls some of their streaming events and over there, and I know he's at an athletic director level at Temple, I believe. And so great guy, always enjoyed him. I think he added a lot to that show at the time, and he's been a good friend.
Well, you talked about Garrett being relentless in learning, and I've heard the same stuff about you, and going on the internet and researching recruits and really keeping abreast of everything. And recruiting, you're one of the few people who's seen Gabby Douglas train recently. So how good does she actually look?
Well, I haven't. Garrett's seen her. I did not get to see her. He saw her when he was in there. It's been several months now. I don't remember when exactly, but he said she looked. He came back saying she looks good. Like she was doing a lot of what she used to do. Now, it was not in routine form or anything like that, but he thought she looked really good. So that was the only real firsthand report that I've gotten, and he thought she looked great. So
now, in terms of recruiting, do you think Kat Ding is your biggest success in terms of taking someone with moderate success and turning them into a star, or where do you
Kat Ding herself into a star? She was a star, she just didn't know it. Like she had something, like she just had an it thing, and she was a fighter. I can remember before we decided to offer her at level 10 nationals that year, it was a disaster of a meet. I think she hit bars, but everything else she fell off beam 2 or 3 times, and it was a mess. And we there was just something there that we liked, just, you could see she was a fighter. And, it just, I don't know, I wish I could take credit for that, but she's a tenacious fighter of a kid. If you know her very well, she doesn't put up with a lot of stuff, or at least she didn't. Maybe now she's softened, she has her own children, but she's tough. She's just a tough, gritty person. And she did that for herself. It took forever. She couldn't stay on the beam to save her life the first couple of years, at Georgia. And then wound up second in the all around at NCAAs by the time she was thought she was done. She is certainly one that I look back on and think, man, that she really made the most of the opportunity that she got. But I don't think it had anything to do with me other than just recognizing something in her and bringing her in and giving her a chance and trying to help her get to it.
What about Chase Brock? Because I remember seeing videos of her when she was committed to Alabama, and I saw her vault and her full out on floor. And it was like smoke signals to people that you got to get this kid to switch, right? Like, she is so good. She wound up getting injured. You picked her up. Where's her potential at right now?
It's Chase's potential is she's an athlete through and through. Like, she's so athletic, and there's some things with her body. Like, she's had some elbow issues in the past that had surgeries before she came to college, and she's got an ankle that can get tender. So we haven't pushed real hard on that full out. She trains it, and you know, I wouldn't rule it out that you might get to see it, but I was really proud of her last year. You know, her freshman year, she contributed a good little bit. Her sophomore year, she was going through a lot, and we didn't get much out of her. And then last year, she really stepped up big when we needed her to. And you know, she struggled with that last pass on floor a lot, but we had to stay with it. You know, call it pulling them through the knot hole a little bit and let her understand that it's okay if you make a mistake, and you just got to keep trying to grow. And she did. Just, I don't know. She's an awesome kid. You know, she went through a lot there at the end of her club career with you know, her coach left, and then things changed for her with regard to her status with Alabama, and she didn't know if she was going to get an opportunity anywhere, and you know, right place at the right time. And her coaches reached out to me and asked me mainly would I just talk to her and encourage her to, you know, maybe, and try to help her find a place to go. And that was the first part of the conversation. But as it went, was more about, hey, you know, could I come to LSU, you know? And she came in a walk-on capacity and has made the most of it. I'm really proud of her. She's a neat kid. She works really, really hard too.
Well, how's Aleah Finnegan doing? I thought it was interesting. Last summer, she did the most gorgeous 1.5 vault at the Asian Games. She competed at half on. Why did you do that with the vaults? And
the 1.5 was not where you saw it at the Asian Games. So we went with the half on front pike because it was the one she could do the most consistently at the time. Now we may indeed go to the 1.5 this year.
1.5's the better vault, Jay. It's clean, it's big, it's better. You know.
However, when I talked to Garrett when he was over there, he's like, she sat them all down for 2 days and then competed it that way. So some of it is about where Aleah is with it, and if Aleah's confident with it, you know. But she'll do both at Worlds in whatever it is later this month, and she's planning to do both of them over there too. So we'll be able to choose. We'll see which one's the most consistent for her. I like the 1.5. Certainly the way she did it at the Asian Games was wonderful. If she could do it that way all the time, then certainly we would put it in there. But if it's not in there, it's because it doesn't look that way all the time. And everybody's got to remember that. I don't want to hear people saying he's such an idiot, he's not doing the 1.5.
I will be on you, Jay, if you just do this 1.5. Now I want to know, I want the 1.5. I want to know if it makes you laugh about how NCAA has really saved USA Gymnastics in the last 5 years. First of all, they have the trainers, you have the masseuses, you've got the LSU Palace Gym, you have everything going on to really keep these kids in top shape. It used to be that if someone was in the NCAA, that was the enemy of USA Gymnastics. So right. What does that change like for you as a coach?
Well, I think it's sort of like a perfect storm of things that came together that have caused this sort of shift where you see in the NCAA gymnasts be able to kind of do both and cross over. I think some of it is everything that went on, the upheaval that occurred that sort of really disturbed the elite world and sort of stunted it and kind of set it back, and they had to reset, and they're still in many ways still trying to figure out that. And so the other part to that is the realization that if their bodies are handled correctly and they can there's the longevity. It's not going to be there for everybody, but it can happen. And you're seeing that with Leanne and Jade, and I mean, even Simone at her age. I mean, so we're seeing maybe a bit of a shift, but if you go all the way back to Mohini, I mean, there was always an indicator that that for certain gymnasts, it could happen that way. I don't know if we've saved anything. I think we've gotten some positive attention. And I'm glad that it's a little more cooperative at this point. But I just think that the collegiate atmosphere is different in so many ways because they're young adults when we coach them, so they can kind of dictate their own outcome, and they're not so reliant on structure being the defining component of their success or failure. They in many cases, they've already been to kind of the top of the mountain, and they figure out where their balance is and how they can manage it best. And we just we take on a supportive role and try to, give them what they need and accentuate their strengths to the best of our ability. And, and in many cases it can be collaborative with their former club coaches because they know their skill level. They know them as athletes better than we do, especially in the first 2 years of college. You're really getting to know them as athletes, and I think sometimes that can be a good thing. I don't know if we've saved USAG. I don't know that I would want to say that.
I think the national team looks very different in the summer than it does at Junior Worlds or in the winter, where they used to dominate those meets and now they don't. And the NCAA athletes have a big part in pulling up the team.
That's true. That part's true. USAG has had to correct a lot of things, and they're still doing it. But I think they've got some people that are trying to put them on the right path, and I don't presume to know everything that they deal with. It's a different world still, and I'm just trying to stay focused on the NCAA world. There's plenty to deal with over here. So
one question with an athlete that you didn't coach, but you know a lot about. Suni Lee, we didn't get to see her on bars so far. We've seen her train on bars. Would you give her every opportunity to be on that world team for this year?
Think so. I mean, again, I don't know all the mechanisms that they have in place, but I don't know how you can have an athlete of that experience level unless she's just physically not able, like if she's just not at a place where she could. But I think if it were me, and it's not, so I put a disclaimer out that I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I just think her experience level, the level of difficulty that she has shown the ability to do and execute at the highest level. She's an Olympic all-around gold medalist, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't know why I think you have to give athletes like that the benefit of the doubt to a certain extent until it gets to a point where you have to make a decision. And if they're not ready and they can't do it, then I feel the same way, potentially about Konnor. If she decides she really wants to make that run, I hope that, that they'll, if she gets in the environment and gets herself in a place where she can do it, then that maybe she would be given an opportunity too.
Have you gotten to see Simone Biles train?
No, I haven't been to WCC. But I went over there, but I wasn't in the gym, so I didn't get to see Simone train. But I don't know if she was doing it. I don't know if she's training separate from everybody else or if she was doing it with everybody. I don't have any idea. But I haven't been in there. Both Bugs and Garrett have been in there since I've been in there.
Mm-hmm. Had you seen her train in the past? I was just wondering if you've, seen her as an athlete, train.
Oh yeah. I've seen her a lot over the years, dating back to when she was with Amy Borman, when she was very, very young, when she was like, maybe even like in that little Hopes division or whatever before. I've seen her train. It's something to behold. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure she would tell you she has to practice, but it just seems so natural. It's like it's overrated. Practice is overrated for somebody that talent. I feel that way about Haleigh. It's like we could probably wait till December to even start training with her on what we do. So Simone's just Simone is I don't even say that she's generational. I think she's won once in a 10 lifetimes in terms of her ability level. It's crazy to watch her. You forget, like I forgot. I went to the Classic and you see all these people doing great vaults, and then all of a sudden she comes down and just does a layout, and it's, you know, exponentially bigger and more dynamic. It's crazy how amazing she is. So, but no, I haven't seen her train, not recently.
Well, I wanted to ask about, you talked about the people that influenced your career. How do you compare Suzanne and D-D and what you learned from them working alongside?
There's some similarities, but there's an awful lot of differences too. How would I compare them? I think they were both extremely ambitious and driven, and both had to fight a lot of battles to get their programs where they were. I see them both as pioneers in what we were doing. I think Suzanne had a knack for the promotional side of things. She had a way of knowing what to say, when to say it, even when it appeared she was saying something controversial. I think she knew exactly what she was doing, and I think and I think there's an art to that. I saw her speak to our teams on meet day, you know, and have a way of saying, like she had a crystal ball, like, you know, like say exactly what they needed to hear in that moment in order to be successful. She had a kind of an uncanny way of reading the moment and being able to do that. I think D-D has so much energy and so much, I guess energy is the right word, because I think in a lot of ways before I got over here, I think she was probably misunderstood a little bit. I think she wanted so much for her program and really just wanted people around her to share the same vision that she had for it. And she saw things going on at other programs that she was striving to get and didn't feel like she had the support for here. And for her, like I gained a lot of respect for her when she brought me in here. And I was honestly, for 6 months, I was kind of dragging my tail a little bit, you know, not just trying to fit in and not trying to make any waves. And I'll never forget it. She came in my office and closed the door and said, "Look, I gave you the title. I brought you here because I want to know what we need to do different." And she goes, "I want your opinion on things." She goes, "We've been doing things this way for 35 years and you've seen things done differently and you guys had a lot of success. I want to show me what we need to do better." And she was very open to change. And I think for someone who'd been doing it that long, that's not a common place for people to be. A lot of people get so set in their ways that they don't want to hear about change. But that wasn't her at all. And she really sort of brought me in and treated me more as an equal partner than she did an assistant coach. So I think there's some similarities in terms of their path and in terms of their energy level. But they're also very, very different. I mean, D-D is Louisiana, and the people here love her, and she is able to inspire and get people, you know, energized and moving in one direction because of that connection that she has with the people of South Louisiana and all that. Suzanne was able to sort of coalesce people in the same way, but it wasn't necessarily about the connection to the state. It was just more in her ability to create a vision that they could buy into and get hold of. So I don't know. I learned a lot from both of them. It would be hard to quantify everything that you learned, but I don't think there's any doubt that a lot of the things that if I brought anything to LSU, it was certainly things that I learned directly from my time at Georgia. And if I was able to add anything, you know, it was from the place. It was the only other place I'd ever been. So you have to, you credit you credit Suzanne for a lot of that. There was things that Doug did that in the gym that I implemented. And Suzanne's was a lot of what we did down here from a marketing standpoint and creating a situation where we could grow the season ticket holders from 500 to 8,000 where it is now is it's directly related to the things that I saw her do. And so I learned a lot from all of them. I mean, I don't know how to compare them necessarily, but I learned a lot from both of them.
Are there coaches that you look up to in other sports that you read about or watch documentaries and get ideas from?
Yeah, I mean, I do that a lot. I read books. I listen to books when I'm in a car ride a long time. A lot of times it's coaches' books, and some of them are coaches that, have done things that you might go, I don't know. Like, Urban Meyer at one point, I thought, he had some pretty good things. And then, and then he does some stuff in his personal life and kind of, you don't want to really associate yourself with that. So I don't know that I have a coach that I try to really emulate, but I do listen to other coaches and I try to hear from other coaches how would what they're saying apply to our situation. And that could be any sport. Like I had the joy of going to the College World Series with Skip Bertman for the first game of the College World Series this year, and get on an airplane and listen to him. He's kind of the John Wooden of college baseball. He won, he put LSU on the map, and he's got lots of stories and the experience that he has and just the way he would relate things to real life to his players. So I don't know that I like try to carbon copy anyone, but I do think I listen to things. I listen to quotes. And try to put a little different spin on it. There's a bunch of them though. I mean, Nick Saban at Alabama football, like he's not always known for being the most warm guy in the world, but I listen to some of the things that he says in terms of excellence and what it takes to be elite and how you get teams to buy into your message and the things like that. I mean, I could go, there's a whole laundry list. I paid attention to what Val used to say. I paid attention to Greg Marsden used to, in our own sport, those two, I listened to them. They were our biggest competitors, but I always tried to glean something from what I would hear them say. I'd listen to press conferences and stuff. And when we were at NCAA, Suzanne would be doing the press conference. I'd find my way in there just because I wanted to hear what everybody was saying about their teams and their process and how they do things. And so there's a lot of them. There's a lot. I learned a lot from Mark Cook back in the day. Steve Shepard, who was at Penn State, I used to listen to him sometimes. Sarah Patterson, as much as she and Suzanne went at each other, I do think underneath it all, there was a level of respect that maybe they acknowledge now more than they did in the heat of the moment. But I've talked to Sarah a lot over the years since they both retired, and just different. I don't know. There's not one, but a lot of them that I try to hear.
And I don't know if you know this, but there's a weird figure skating connection. One of your former athletes, Julie Glick, I don't know if you were coaching at that point, but she has a daughter that's one of the up and coming top pair skaters in the country.
Oh,
Michelle Kwan's niece is at the University of Washington, and she does 1 to 2 events for them. So those are kind of under the radar that I don't think gymnastics people are aware of.
I didn't know Julie had a daughter. I did not. Julie, she was on those. She was on the 87 team, maybe. I don't know if she was on the 89 team or not, but she was on that 80. She was definitely on Suzanne's first national championship team. And I did not know that she had a daughter figure skating. That's pretty cool.
She got 2, and they're
wow.
And then Michelle Kwan's niece is at University of Washington. She did bars for them.
She's doing gymnastics. How about that? A little crossover, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird crossover.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's elements to the two sports that are definitely similar for sure. There's the intricacies of the sport, the artistic things that can translate, and the level of discipline that it requires. I think those are all, pretty common traits between the two.
Two more questions for you. One is, do you read Greg Marsden's tweets and his Twitter feed? And will you tweet, when you retire? Yeah.
No, I will not. I don't think, unless I just get in a mood where I want to irritate somebody. I don't know, but I don't think I'll do that. I did for a while, and every now and then he would say something, and I would just send him a message like, "What are you doing, old man?" He's just, but I think he just likes to poke a little bit, and I like Greg. Greg was always, when I was very young, Greg was always very decent and kind to me. And I've talked to him over the years and shared flights with him and sat in Delta Sky clubs and picked his brain when he was still active. And, I like him a lot. I know his tweets get people's nerves, but I think that's by design.
I would agree with that. And lastly, you said that you want to watch on TV, but LSU has really had some of the great audience reaction shots on TV. You had Mary Lou Retton watching her daughter compete, which was great TV. And now you have D-D in the stands, which I think is one of the keys to your broadcast. So are you sure that you will stay home? And
yeah, it's just not something that I can envision myself. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't, that I'm not going to boycott it. I just don't think that it'll be, that's just kind of not my personality. I don't know. I think I would have a harder time if I was sitting in the stands all the time. I think that would create more angst than for myself. So my personality has always been kind of like all or nothing. And I think whenever I get to the place to retire, it's just, if I find myself around something, it just creates confusion for me. If it's something that I'm done with or moved on from, it just creates confusion for me. So, like I said, I'm kind of an all or nothing person, and I don't mean that to be that's the way anybody else should be. I think it's great that D.D.'s there. I think our fans love it. I think all of that is good, and I don't mean
loves it. Yeah,
what's that?
I'm sure ESPN loves it. I mean, it's great.
And she brings Tim Mulkey, our basketball coach, to our meets sometimes, and I love having him there. I think it's great. It's just I'll probably be a little different. I don't know.
Well, we wish you so much luck this season, and definitely we'll be paying attention to what you do. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I hope I gave you thorough enough answers. I'm a little bit of a rambler, as you can tell.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Right.
Have a great day. Okay.
All
bye
right.
now.